At this point, animal protein bias begins to creep in. It is obvious that animals are physiologically more like humans than plants are. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that in comparing meat from a single animal species, like beef, with food from a single plant species, like oatmeal, the mixture of amino acids in the animal product will tend to be closer to the proportions in which humans need them. Because of this, many have incorrectly reasoned that a diet based on animal protein sources like meat is superior to a diet based on plant products in providing adequate amounts of the essential amino acids in the right proportions. Plant versus animal sources of protein. This brings us back to the basic question. Do animal sources of nutrition provide better quality protein than plant sources? If you look at the diet as a whole, the answer is no. This is exactly what Hardinga and Stair found in their classic research. They looked at the complete diets of three groups. Meat-eating Americans, pure vegetarians, those who excluded all animal products from their diet, and lacto-ovo vegetarians, those who excluded all animal products except for dairy products and eggs. The researchers measured the actual amount of each amino acid consumed by each of these groups from their whole diets. They then compared that intake with the ideal balance of amino acids needed by man according to two standards. 1. A standard determined by Dr. Rose in the 1940s and 50s and still used by the World Health Organization to this day, and 2. Human breast milk. The only food specifically designed to meet all the amino acid needs of a human is human breast milk. Amazingly, the best quality protein among the three complete duets was the pure vegetarian diet. The mix of amino acids in the total vegetarian diet most closely resembled the mix in Rose's recommendation and in human breast milk. The message from this classic research is simple. If you look at a single food, animal products have the upper hand in providing protein quality. However, when you look at the entire diet, then the pure vegetarian diet emerges as superior in protein quality. The non-vegetarian diet departs from both standards almost twice as far as the pure vegetarian diet. Comparisons of protein and milk of different species. The protein content of milk is an indication of the protein requirement of a newborn, whether that newborn is human or animal. Let us examine the differences in amount of protein in milk in the different mammalian species. This comparison demonstrates that humans actually need less protein than the animals on the list. Notice that the relative growth rate is greater in those that have greater amounts of protein in the milk, as would be expected, because of the greater protein requirement to build body tissue. If a human consumed a rat's milk from birth, would that baby be able to double its birth weight in days instead of months? The answer is obviously no, since the rate of growth is largely genetically determined. The excess protein would not be utilized and, as we will later see, could actually harm the developing child. At this point some may counter. You must eat a perfect balance of amino acids at a given meal to utilize them properly. This argument is based on an old theory that argued you must complement plant proteins at a given meal to get the proper protein balance. This would require an impractical task of weighing each serving that makes up a meal, calculating the amino acid content of each, and then adding them up. The American Dietetic Association has not been known for advocating a vegetarian diet. However, in 1988, they came out solidly in support of vegetarian diets. They stated, "It is the position of the American Dietetic Association that vegetarian diets are healthful and nutritionally adequate when appropriately planned." They addressed the issue of complementing proteins in their paper. It is not necessary that complementation of amino acid profiles be precise and at exactly the same meal, as the recently popular combined proteins theory suggested. The reality is that a vegetarian diet that contains fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables is fully adequate in protein. Whether you are a total vegetarian or meat eater, you should appropriately plan your diet beyond the narrow scope of amino acids. Other nutrients need to be included in the planning. No one without some thought into his regular eating practices can simply expect to be getting a nutritionally balanced diet, regardless of whether or not meat is included in the fare. There is no evidence that vegetarians must be more knowledgeable than meat eaters in order to be on a healthful diet. In fact, the evidence leans solidly in the opposite direction. If you know nothing about nutrition, you will likely be healthier by leaving meat out of your diet rather than including it. Then plant proteins furnish all of the essential amino acids. Let us take some examples of the ultimate and unbalanced vegetarian diets, namely, single plant foods, and see how they measure up to the amino acid requirements. For the sake of assessing how plant products fare in their protein content, I have chosen to compare them to the highest adult daily requirement for each of the essential amino acids. Since we are looking at the wildly hypothetical example of a person eating only a single food all day long, the comparisons must be based on a sufficient total daily caloric intake. I have chosen to use a level of 2,500 calories, which is the basis of the percent daily values for many American men and active women. I chose 11 foods commonly eaten by non-vegetarians and vegetarians alike. The recommended daily amounts of these amino acids are represented by the cluster of short bars on lower right. The content of amino acids in each of 11 plant foods is represented by the taller bars in the main body of the figure. Note that these bars are much taller for all 11 foods than the bars representing the recommended amounts, signifying that plant foods supply much more protein than is needed. This is true for every amino acid of every food. In fact, if you chose virtually any vegetable or whole grain, you would find that they have more than adequate quantities of all 8 essential amino acids. The recommended daily quantities are the strictest requirements of Monroe and Krim, which are similar to those of the World Health Organization. Thus, there is no shortage of protein here. Any one of them alone furnishes more than sufficient amounts of each of the 8 essential amino acids. It follows that a diet consisting of a variety of plant foods will have a greater content of all essential amino acids than is needed. Notice that there is no fruit on this list. Fruit contains a lower amount of protein, and some varieties may not contain an adequate amount of each individual essential amino acid when eaten alone. There may be other plant foods that are similar to fruit. However, when you think about it, much of the world's population for centuries has survived primarily on plant proteins. They have been able to do this simply because vegetable protein provides all the amino acids needed for good health. I do not recommend that you eat only one vegetable throughout the day and nothing else. Such a diet would lack a balance of vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals, even though the protein intake would be adequate. Such a balance does come easily, however, by eating a variety of vegetables, grains, nuts, and fruits. We see that we do not need a college degree in nutrition to get quality protein on a vegetarian diet. Remember, doctors Hardinga and Stair found that even pure vegetarians living in the 1960s without all the benefits of knowledge that we have today were doing just fine regarding their intake of essential amino acids. The data on the amino acid content of foods helps us to appreciate why this was the case. Perhaps one of the best summary statements on this whole topic is provided by a respected nutrition scientist, Dr. Mark Messina. Dr. Messina holds a PhD in nutrition science from Michigan State University and has worked in the National Cancer Institute's Diet and Cancer branch. After speaking in detail about the balance of amino acids in plant products, he made the following summary statement. When people eat several servings of grains, beans, and vegetables throughout the day and get enough calories, it is virtually impossible to be deficient in protein.